Ready to go? Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the first Assets and Strategy Committee meeting for this municipal year. Could I ask everyone to note the fire safety instruction that on hearing the alarm, you should leave the chamber via the double doors at the back, exit the building through the main entrance and congregate in the car park. Also, please switch off your mobile phone and turn any other electronic devices being used to silent. I would like to remind everyone present this meeting is subject to an internet webcast recording where the proceedings are capable of repeated viewing. If you're seated in the public area of the council chamber, it is likely that your image will be captured by the recording cameras and resulting in your image becoming part of the broadcast. This may infringe your human rights, and if you wish to avoid this, you should leave the public seating area in the main body of the council chamber and move to the upper public gallery. Members, that if for any reason you are not present for the whole debate on an item, you will generally not be allowed to vote on that item. Item number 1, apologies for absence. Ms Borman, are there any apologies?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Apologies have been received from Councillor Quirk.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms Borman. Item 2 is declarations of interest. Are there any declarations to be made? No, thank you. Item 3 is the minutes of the previous Asset, Project and Strategy Committee meeting on the 11th of March. The minutes begin on page 5 and the action sheet begins on page 13 of the agenda. Is it agreed that I sign as a correct record the minutes of the Assets, Project and Strategy Committee meeting held on the 11th of March 2026, which begins on page 5 of the supplementary agenda? Thank you. Item number 4 is the Chair's update. The report begins on page 15 of the agenda. Are there any questions from the committee? Councillor Gordon.
Chair, thank you. Page 15, Courage Playing Fields, which I know has been a very, very long, drawn-out saga. Is there actually any progress on it? Thank you.
The answer to that is yes, progress, but not actually a definitive position. I think it's best framed as the tone of the conversations is positive at this stage when it may not have been in the past, but I'm more than happy for officers to give you, as a ward member, full and comprehensive update over email that we can share as well, if that's useful for you. I think it's just effectively it's a negotiation either way. It's the item we put forward at the last committee meeting has led to a movement in positioning, but it's actually getting to the stage of an agreement is taking more time than certainly is ideal. But I think it's fair to say our position is very clear, and we're hoping that the club is moving towards our position and a reasonable compromise within that as well, if that's helpful. But a full update from officers will be sent to you. Councillor Hurst.
I had another question, but I'll just follow up on that one first. I mean, I remember way back when the controversy with Shenfield Cricket Club has always really been around the use of the car park by other users of the Courage Playing Fields. There isn't an awful lot of other parking very close. So I just really hope that our negotiations, they will always be willing to accept if we're giving them all the parking. But what would happen to other users of the Courage Playing Fields remains a moot point. So just an encouragement from my side to try and make sure that we have got adequate parking for other users of the playing fields rather than giving the whole thing to the Shenfield Cricket Club. There should be an ability to share.
I think you're in a consensus position with the entire committee.
Am I? And I'm kind of late to the party.
And I think it's worth, we'll get a full update on what the position was historically and what our negotiation positioning is as well, because to your point, we have a mandate to make sure that those playing fields are available to those who wish to enjoy them, not just the cricket club. The cricket is to be enabled there, but it isn't the only function of it. So certainly that's the case, and I hope it's fair to say ward members have been heavily engaged in working towards what our position should be in this, and it's certainly at no point have I sought on the officers, the mandate has been there for a compromise that is overtly favourable to one when it's actually a balancing of interest we have to make for all users of those playing fields.
I did have another question there,
Okay,
which was the original question, reason I put my hand up, which was around the transfer of the Marketplace car park in Ilkeston to Ilkeston and Fryling Parish Council. I mean, at the moment, it's ours, and yeah, there must be an asset value, there must be a level of income. Is this simply a transfer to them and allow them to do as they will with it, or is there any quid pro quo?
So I'll ask Mr Anderson to answer that.
Thank you, Chair. So officers are currently in discussions with Ingatestone and Fareham Parish Council regarding the details of the transfer. But just for clarification, the car park is actually a non-chargeable car park, so it's done on a restricted waiting time as opposed to actually charging. So at the moment, the council doesn't actually receive any pay and display income. It receives money from the penalty charge notices, if any are issued.
But that hasn't always been the case.
Well, it shouldn't be the case.
And yeah, I just wonder what terms we're handing it over on. Are we giving them? Will it be theirs completely, and they'll have completely free rein?
That any asset transfer has to come to a committee for approval. So whilst it's being developed, you will see the process ahead of you. And again, I'm happy for councillors to be informed ahead of that committee meeting about what the negotiation position would be. Effectively, as Ms Martin's indicated, right now this is only a cost to the council. There has been, I'll be corrected, but I believe it's been free for circa a decade plus. So this isn't necessarily a new precedent in that sense. So the potential for it and terms would be it has to be operated as a car park available to the community. It wouldn't be they could use it for another tool or item. And I believe in the asset transfer process, for example, they couldn't decide to develop it for residential accommodation. That provision would certainly be in there. But again, I think it's worth giving you members an update on that because, again, recognise new committee members and how the committee asset transfer process works. That will be, I think, helpful for everyone. I have Councillor Parker and Barber. Given Councillor Parker as a member of the committee, I'll go to Councillor Parker first.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I can't understand why there's no income to the council from the car park because we negotiated a deal with the parish council. I don't know when it stopped for them to allow it to be free. They was paying a sum to the council for that privilege. It seems that seems to have dropped by the wayside, or you haven't got no record of it anymore.
Mr Barnes.
Thank you, Chair. So the agreement is still in place. What we don't receive is pay and display income. So again, what we receive is a proportion of the income from penalty charge notices. It is a very small amount in comparison to other sites, obviously.
Thank you. And just one other question. Going back to Courage Playing Fields, it's been difficult negotiations for this for a very, very long time. So my question is, when a decision is made or when the contract is, agreed, will that come back to this committee to accept it, or are you going to accept it prior to it coming back to the committee? Because I still think that perhaps they're getting too much out of this at this moment in time.
Councillor Parker, just for assurance, the report makes clear that the outcome of the discussion were presented to the September Assets and Strategy Committee, so it will return.
My question is it going to be presented as a fait accompli, or is it going to be
every item is an
presented to
item
be
for
voted
decision?
on?
It's a decision item.
What is the councillor asked after, Chair?
Sorry, Councillor Aspinall.
I couldn't understand it.
Councillor Parker is confirming that the final agreement will be subject to a vote and agreement from this committee, and no. It's now to Courage Playing Fields. He's moved item on.
Right.
I think it's both items actually will be voted on by the committee. Any disposal of an asset or any negotiated contract at this level has to have a committee vote to it unless specific delegated authority within a term was given, and in neither of these cases that has not been granted, so therefore we will make a vote on that final item. We will have that decision power as a committee.
Thank you for that explanation.
Councillor Parker, anything else?
I have, but it's not
on that item?
So perhaps I could speak to you another time about another asset.
Certainly, Councillor Parker. I'm more than happy in turn for any engagement any members have on different asset schemes, contracts, etc. Please be free to contact myself or Mrs Barnes, and we will certainly answer them. This shouldn't be a partisan or an administration issue about how we manage our assets in your wards. Councillor Barber, you patiently waited there, so thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair. First of all, thank you. I'm not a member of your committee, but it's always good to be here and hear everything that's going on under your chairmanship. Couple of things, if I may. We had a very successful tour of inside the buildings for both Hutton Poplars Hall and Hutton Poplars Lodge, thanks to Mr Anderson and Mr Mayhew earlier in the year. Would it be possible to, as we're progressing now towards completion of leases and signatures on leases, to have a follow-up meeting to go through with officers and yourself or whoever is appropriate to go through the some of the smaller items, for example, the fact that the dining hall is now used as polling station and that the car park has historically been used for school parking for long ridings, accessing it via the Woodland Walk. It would be good to just make sure that we can manage expectations with both residents and parents of pupils at that school. So that's the first request, please. Can I also place on record my thanks? It's not within your report, but it is something that I've raised and was in the action plan for the minutes of the last meeting, which was the graffiti on level 1 of Cockfold Road multi-storey car park. I'd like to thank both Mr Anderson, Mr Mayhew, and also Councillor Kendall for progressing the resolution of those issues. I was there last Friday and I saw that the graffiti on level 1 has now been removed, and that was a substantial job, and I applaud you for the way that's done, and I hope that those 2 floors are going to be brought back into use fairly soon. But I just wanted to place on record my thanks. It's much appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bob. I think your request is reasonable. I don't think there's any disagreement from officers, and we'll coordinate that as soon as possible. And I can be part of it or not, that's up to officers' discretion, but more than happy for that to happen. And again, welcome any ward member being proactive about finding out more or engaging on the assets in their area. Councillor Kendall.
Yeah, it was only a quick one, Chair. I appreciate members obviously catching up in terms of different things that are happening, but just when it comes to Courage and Marketplace Car Park, I think we just need to just have faith in our officers who've been negotiating over a long period of time on these issues. You know, the good thing is, whilst this committee might change in terms of its membership, we have had that continuity on both of those issues, and certainly the experience and knowledge on both those issues. And, you know, I think, you know, when it comes to negotiation, they're going to negotiate the best deal they can. It's not down to us as committee members to get involved in nitty-gritty negotiation. They will get the best deal they can, and particularly with Courage, if we come out with a deal that I'm sure will be as beneficial as it can be for this council, I think we'll all be delighted, because it has gone on far, far too long. And I think in recent times, various things have happened around the county, various car parks. You know, it may focus people's minds a bit that they need to get it sorted. So I think Councillor Gordon might be hopefully pleased when he does get the feedback that things are moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Kendall. I have no other further questions on this item, so I move on to item 5, Performance Management Framework and Corporate Key Performance Indicators. Probably is on page 17 of the agenda. Mr Nicholson, do you have anything to add?
No, the report is as written. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you. Just for questions, I will move the recommendation set out on page 18 of the agenda. Do I have a seconder?
Happy to second. Reserve right to speak.
Thank you. Councillor Hurst.
Yeah, thank you. I'm happy to support the framework overall. Just really got a few questions about the stuff in Appendix B. Firstly, on the top of it, the Housing and Health Committee and Communities Committee, the 2 that are going, it says reported as part of wider housing KPIs. I just wondered what those wider housing KPIs that capture those issues are, because in the past, certainly time to re-let housing and level of rent arrears have been early indicators of the system being stretched. I'm just not sure, they don't appear to appear anywhere else on this list that I could see. And then the other question I have is around the waste and street care piece, where the proposal is to ditch all of the tonnage measures about what's actually being picked up and recycled. you're going for percentages instead, I think, which is okay, I suppose, but it would still be good. If you're going to do that, I still think it would be worthwhile, because having had this portfolio before and seen how it can move quite substantially in terms of tonnage, and the tonnage of green waste recycled can absolutely dwarf the amount of other recycling at a particular time of year. It completely blindsides you. It would be interesting to know, as well as just the residual waste collected in kilograms per household, the total waste collected and the total waste recycled. And then the third question is, you're changing percentage which has been sent for reuse, recycling, composting and digestion to recycled. I wondered what that change really meant. I wondered why you needed to make the change. Is there something else that's happening now apart from reuse, recycling, composting or anaerobic digestion? Why are we bumping? So 3 questions really, many for officers.
I will hand those to the officers because I can't answer them. Ms Nicholson, Ms Keating.
Oops.
So the housing KPIs are already reported to the housing committee, so they are reported within the same committee report. So the same KPIs are reported within the corporate suite. Those top 2.
I thought this listed the KPIs going to committees. It gives the committees names.
So yes, these are the committees that are reported to the committees as part of the quarterly corporate suite of reports. However, housing have their own separate reporting that goes to the exact same committee, so that those figures will be repeated essentially twice to the same committee, those 2 particular ones.
I think to give you, this is a format of reporting that goes across different committees, and it's a report that comes every quarter or annually for some of the items, and it's just the consistency. Some committees will have trackers or indicators that are reported as a matter of course anyway. What this has done is those that are reported as a matter of course, or most take relets, comes to every housing committee as I understand it. What won't be duplicated in the quarterly KPI list, but it still will appear at every housing committee. That's my understanding of it, but Councillor Hurstfield.
So just for clarity, there is a level of KPI reporting which is out with the performance management framework.
So, yes.
I don't quite understand why we would have that.
Yeah,
which these are 2 of them, and rather than put them in the same committee, they are incorporated into the rest of the report alongside.
I'm not in favour of repeating, but I'm just curious as to, does that mean every committee has stuff outside of the management framework?
There is a requirement for we are. So there's a requirement for a large amount of reporting as part of housing regulator reporting, so we incorporate those 2 within that committee report.
I think to your point, Councillor Hurst, housing is somewhat bespoke because of the HRA regulatory requirements. I think the environmental ones is a slightly different question, and I'd like officers, I think, rather than to answer it tonight, check if those items will be reported back to Clean and Green, because to your point, I find them interesting. Percentage is one thing, actual what items within it, what are we good at, what are we bad at, is another interesting indicator that I think a bit more specialist potentially than a wider performing framework. But to your point, some are KPIs performance, some are actually monitoring items, and it's whether you can. But I get your point. I think it's worthwhile if officers come back just to confirm what there would be on those items, if that's okay with you, Councillor Hurst. I didn't have any other questions. No other questions on that items. Or questions. Councillor Munden, you've reserved your right to speak. Would you like to add anything?
No, not at this moment.
I don't think you need to hear from me again, so we will now vote on the recommendations set on page 18 of the agenda. All those in favour? That's carried unanimously. Thank you, members. Item 6 is the Policy and Strategy Framework Update 2026-2027. Report begins on page 41 of the agenda. Ms Nicholson, do you have anything to add?
No, nothing further to add. Happy to take questions.
Thank you. I will move the recommendation set out on page 42 of the agenda. Do I have a second?
Happy as second, reserve right to speak.
Thank you. Does anyone have any comments or questions? If not, we will move on at pace. Councillor Munden, you reserve your right to speak. Would you like to add anything?
No, thank you, Chair.
I don't need to hear from me again, so we will now vote on the recommendations on page 42 of the agenda. All those in favour? That is carried unanimously. Thank you, members. Item 7 is a corporate compliance quarterly update. The report begins on page 55 of the agenda. Mr. Anderson, do you have anything to add? And then Mr. Mayhew will present to us.
Thank you, Chair. Chair, members, the report before you provides the Q1 update on corporate property compliance across the Council's estate. Since the last reporting period, the overall position has continued to improve, with further progress made in reducing outstanding actions and strengthening assurance across the key compliance areas. In particular, electrical compliance has improved following completion of remedial works at one further site, increasing the number of compliant directly managed sites to 17 out of the 18. Fire safety actions have also moved forward, and a further 6 actions closed this period, bringing the total completed to 89 and reducing the number of actions still in progress or awaiting commencement. Asbestos management has also remained at 100% compliance, supported by completed re-inspection surveys across 14 sites with no remedial actions identified. Water hygiene management arrangements have also progressed, with draft processes and code of practice now prepared for review ahead of formal approval and the next round of Legionella risk assessments. While some areas remain unchanged, including gas safety and LOLA, these are being actively monitored and managed within the existing compliance framework. Overall, the report demonstrates a positive direction of travel, continued risk reduction and a clear focus on maintaining statutory compliance across the corporate estate. Members are therefore asked to note the update and the actions taken, but I'm also happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Barnes. Before Mr. Mayhew begins, I will annoy Councillor Russell because it's a recommendation to note, but I hope you understand why, given it's a compliance framework we are being presented to, and it's actually making sure that we understand where we are in terms of various risks across our property portfolio. But I will move the recommendation as set out on page 56 of the agenda. Do I have a second?
Yep, happy a second.
Thank you, Councillor Mullen. Mr. Mayhew, over to you.
Good evening, members. This is the corporate property portfolio performance up to the 12th of June 2026. Water hygiene. All properties continue to hold valid water hygiene risk assessments completed between 2019 and 2022. The Council's water hygiene management processes and codes of practice have now been drafted and are currently being reviewed by relevant officers prior to submission for formal Council approval. Subject to that approval, the next round of Legionella assessments will then be commissioned across the portfolio. No other changes have been identified in relation to water hygiene since the last reporting period. LOLA. All scheduled servicing and statutory inspections for operational lifts have been completed. Dashboard compliance still remains at 80%, reflecting 2 lifts at the Nightingale Centre, which are currently out of service. There are no further changes to report since the previous reporting period. Fire safety. A total of 116 fire risk assessment actions were identified across the portfolio, which comprised of 31 high priority, 84 medium and 1 low. In the previous reporting period, 83 actions had been closed, which were made up of 28 high, 54 medium and 1 low, with 23 actions being progressed and a further 10 pending. Current reporting period. A further 6 actions were closed during this reporting period, increasing the total number of completed actions now to 89. This reflects continued progress across the portfolio and is broken down as follows: 29 high priority actions, 59 medium and 1 low. A total of 16 actions remain actively in progress, which comprise of 2 high priority actions and 14 medium priority actions. In relation to the 2 remaining high priority fire risk assessment actions, both are actively being managed through the compliance programme but remain open for different reasons. The first relates to compartmentation and fire stopping. The fire risk assessment recommendation is for a full intrusive compartmentalisation survey covering concealed voids behind wall linings, panelling and within basement areas. Unlike many fire risk assessment actions that can be addressed through routine maintenance works, this recommendation requires specialist investigation to establish the extent of any compartmentation deficiencies before a detailed scope of remedial fire stopping works can be developed. The building remains subject to an existing fire detection, alarm and fire safety management controls, and there is currently no evidence of a specific compartmentation failure presenting an immediate risk. However, until the survey has been completed, the extent of any non-compliance, associated costs and the programme of remedial works cannot be accurately defined. The action therefore remains on the Fire Risk Assessment Register pending completion of the survey and subsequent implementation of any identified remedial works. The second high-risk action relates to the completion of a fire evacuation drill. Whilst recorded as a high priority action, the risk is mitigated by the building's very low occupancy and its is primarily used as a remote workshop and storage facility rather than a regular occupied workplace. This is administrative rather than a physical remedial action and remains open pending completion and recording of a fire evacuation exercise. The fire risk assessment permits this requirement to be met through a desktop fire drill, which will review evacuation arrangements, emergency procedures and responsibilities for the limited number of building users. Once the exercise has been completed and documented, the action can be closed. In addition, 5 medium priority actions are no longer being progressed. One of these relates to a property that is now being prepared for sale, while the remaining 4 will be considered as part of the site refurbishment project, where the scope of works is currently being finalised. This approach helps ensure that investment is aligned to the wider project brief and delivers best value. There are 6 actions still to be started, all of which are medium priority, providing a clear and manageable next phase of delivery. Asbestos management. Asbestos management compliance remains at 100% with no change since the previous update. The position remains unchanged following completion of asbestos re-inspection surveys at 14 sites. No remedial actions were identified and all recommendations relate solely to ongoing monitoring. In accordance with HSG 264, where asbestos-containing materials are identified or presumed, a material score is applied to assess the potential for fibre release should the material be disturbed. Across the 14 surveyed sites, the current risk profile remains 54 very low, 11 low, 2 medium and none are high. For assurance, the 2 medium risk items relate solely to insulation residue within a plant room, which is a non-public area. The location is clearly marked with asbestos warning signage, and any work undertaken in this area is managed through the council's contractor management process. Electrical safety. Of the 18 directly managed sites requiring an electrical installation condition report, 16 were certified as satisfactory in the previous reporting period, with 2 sites remaining unsatisfactory. The unsatisfactory, I'll call it Site A, has 14 C2s and 2 C3s. This site remains unoccupied and the required remedial works will be completed when the building is brought back into operational use. Updates during this period. During the current reporting period, the remedial works identified at the further site were completed on the 23rd of March, increasing the number of compliant directly managed sites to 17 out of 18. No other sites were due for inspection during this reporting period. In relation to a site which received a satisfactory inspection, which we're calling Site C, there are 24 C3s on this site. Officers have been working closely with stakeholders to programme these works in a way that minimises disruption to building operations. However, due to operational constraints, progress did not advance as originally planned. However, I am pleased to say that works have now commenced and 2 of the 6 distribution boards have been upgraded. The remaining 4 distribution boards are scheduled to be upgraded before the end of July. Gas safety. No sites reached their inspection date during the last reporting period, and, as such, there is no further update to report at this time. 2 sites remain capped. That concludes the compliance update, Chair. I have nothing further to add, but I am happy to answer any questions.
I have Councillor Kendall.
Thank you, Chair. Just one question. It's about the 2 lifts at the Nightingale Centre. Is there a timescale for getting them fixed and back in use? Thank you.
To make you on.
The lifts are old and out of serviceable life. They need to be replaced. We are prioritising the lifts at the multi-storey car park first. That is currently going through a tender process. So that's in progress now. Once the multi-storey car park lifts have been awarded and started, the intention is then to fall back onto the Nightingale Centre and review those.
Councillor Gordon.
Thank you, Chair. Through you, can I ask the officer a quick question? It says on water hygiene, LRAs were completed between 2019 and 2022. That strikes me as a few years ago now. Is there actually a legal requirement to go back and revisit them and retest them? And what is the time frame? Thank you.
In relation to Legionella risk assessments, they would normally be carried out every 2 years, but there is no requirement to actually undertake a Legionella risk assessment unless there has been significant change to the system or there has been a Legionella outbreak. We've been reviewing our procedures in relation to Legionella risk assessments, and we're currently reviewing them as reported. I'm very pleased to say that we're now almost at the stage where they are going to be approved, and then we can bring the whole portfolio up to date in 2026 with new Legionella risk assessments which work in conjunction with our new procedures.
Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Davis.
Going back to the Nightingale Centre, I know this has been out of use for a little while. Has it had much of a detrimental impact on the users, or is it sort of a minor point for the users that they haven't managed to access it by other means?
Thank you, Councillor Davis. There has been a temporary ramp installed to the right of the lift going into the main hall. I think probably from a user's perspective, the lift would be very much welcomed, but we do have provision in place at the moment to assist as best we can until we can get the new lifts sorted.
Thank you. I have no further questions. Catherine Munden, would you like to say anything?
No, not that.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr Mayhew. Thank you, Mr Barnes. We will now vote on the recommendations set out on page 56 of the agenda. All those in favour? That's carried unanimously. Thank you, members. Item number 8 is the Brentwood Centre project update. The report begins on page 63 of the agenda. Mrs Barnes, do you have anything to add?
Thank you, Chair. The report updates committee on the progress that we've made regarding the Brentwood Centre development project. So it focuses on the completion of the phase 1 work stream, which was the swimming pool and wet side refurbishment. That has been completed and is now open. It explains that we have submitted planning for the wider scheme, and we are working through the planning timetable. We've submitted our application to the Football Foundation regarding external funding, and we are currently looking at our procurement and delivery arrangements so that we can bring the final business case back to committee in September. We've confirmed tendered costs, confirmed funding and updated project government arrangements for sign-off. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mrs Barnes. I will now move the recommendations set out on page 79 of the agenda. Page 63 of the agenda. No, page 63 of the agenda. Sorry, reading the wrong item. Do I have a seconder?
Happy to second. Reserve my right to speak.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Hurst.
Yes, thank you, and thank you very much for the update. Really welcome to see, and good to see the progress has been made, and very much look forward to the final business case coming back in September. Just really an ask as we progress to that. Reading through it, I'm left a little concerned around the fact that we've basically given SLM the ability to design, spec and procure the reprovision of the centre and the refurbishment, and they will be the ones who are operating it and making a return out of it. I understand from conversations with officers that that's an issue which has been looked at and dealt with, but it is a very clear conflict of interest. And I'd just like to ask now that when the final business case comes back, it explores that relationship, what the mitigations are, and how we can therefore be assured that we are not paying for someone else's spec for someone else to make a return on. It feels a little bit naive of us, shall we just say. I'm told that it's been dealt with, but I'd really like to have it explained in black and white, in detail, when it comes back, please. That's the ask.
Mrs Barnes, would you like to add anything to that? But yes, I think it's a reasonable request.
So the final business case will include all the detail around progressing how we enter into the relevant legal documents, which is a DBOM, design, build, operate and maintain. which is a Sport England template that we use with the leisure provider. Regarding the work that currently we've entered into for SLM to go and get tendered costs for us and for route to delivery, that is off of the back of a letter of intent that was drafted by our legal advisors, which is explicit with our gateways that need to be achieved, but also that the design, obviously the council has created the design up to REBA Stage 3, which has been submitted as part of the planning application, and then following that SLM will take forward REBA, what we call REBA Stage 4A, which is a detailed design, but it has to link back into all our original design as part of the planning application. We sit on the scoring of the tendered costs, and also we have our own QS that will make sure that the design spec is as we intended as the council as part of our planning application, but also checking the costs as well that are coming back. But it will all be included in the final business case, which will have significant detail, as well as all the legal appendices to back up that business case.
Thank you, Mrs Barnes. I think it's quite clear to officers now that Councillor Hurst will be looking at this very carefully. So those checks and balances and the governance procedures will be need to be very clear. I think all of us will appreciate that as well, because this matters to all of us, and it has to be right, and it has to be the most bang for our buck as an investment. Councillor Parker.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I'm a bit not concerned because perhaps a lot of work has gone into it, but the banded about figure of 25 million seems a bit loose to me in terms of what the cost will be. There's no indication that that has been looked at through quantity surveyors and build-out costs and so on and so forth. Is this an estimate on behalf of the council's estimate, or has it been determined by the proper procedures? And also, I know it says in the risk assessment that tender costs will be attained before final commitment. The final business case will test affordability, value for money, funding assumptions and risk allowances before approval is sought. I mean, that 25 million, I'm very surprised that there's no slippage percentage in there as well, if it had been a figure that had been decided on build-out costs. So my question, I suppose, basically is, I hope it hasn't been pulled out the air, or has it been properly assessed that is the cost it's going to be?
I think, Councillor Parker, I know you're new to this committee, but there's been 3 different stages where there has been quantity surveyor-led costs, architect-led costs. The 25 million includes considerable allowance for slippage, overs and unders. Admittedly, this is in the pink papers previously, but you can be assured that the 25 million figure was not pulled out of the air. It came to a costing and then a reasonable headroom to give us scope beyond that, given we know the previous council projects have always had slippage, world conflicts, other factors that have achieved costs, and I think we take some lessons, positive lessons, from comments people like Councillor Hurst made about Thurrock, that you don't just estimate, you check, you check, you check again, and then you add headroom in case it goes wrong, which the headroom to an extent probably made the figure arguably slightly prettier at the top at 25 million, but there is a good amount of slippage allowances and, I've forgotten the phraseology for it, within there, and again, we'll be happy to share those reports that have gone through. I think it is 3 times. Through committee on various stages of how we got to that figure, what elements part the final design, and there was some movement within that when elements of the design changed and moved on through the various REBA stages as well. Mrs Barnes, do you have anything to add?
No, just to confirm, Chair, what you said, we have an external QS as part of the project team, and through every stage, every REBA stage, the QS has provided us updated cost reports, and will continue to as we progress through the stages. Regarding the budget has been allocated and split between the centre, the 3G pitches, professional fees, as well as holding back contingency, which we will reduce the contingency when we get to final figured costs. The contingency remains higher than we would like because we're not at tendered costs yet until we go to the market and we understand what the market is pricing. But we have a QS on board, and all the information that's been provided has been provided from a QS cost consultant report.
Thank you, Mrs Barnes. Councillor Gordon, did you have your hand up? What was it? Councillor Hurst, sorry.
I was just going to say, for those of us who haven't been on this, the predecessor of this committee for some time, it would be really helpful to have sight of the relevant pink papers, if that could be done. Obviously, we can't pull them off the website in the way we would do with the published papers.
I think
Obviously,
that's
that could
a
be arranged.
reasonable,
I would really welcome it, please.
reasonable request.
Playing catch up.
And you'll also see the evolution in the project in the term it has been checked and challenged, and in turn it went through what was the SAMWAG, Strategic Asset Management Working Asset Management and Renovation Working Group, but which was cross-party, and former Councillor Poppy was heavily involved in challenging those costings as well to give some assurance it wasn't just myself and former Councillor Cloak. There were a few of us actually making challenges to those costs as well. Councillor, I'll go to Councillor Aspinall first, then back to Councillor Parker. Councillor Aspinall.
Yeah, is it possible that Councillor Parker may like to apologise now to the professional officers that have put so many hundreds, if not thousands of hours between them to come up with this, to have it said to them tonight, we hope it's not a figure you've pulled out of the air, is simply insulted. And I would like an apology because, yes, you may be more forgiving, Chairman, that this is a new member of this committee, but surely you research before you come. You look at your agenda and you question. You've had a group meeting before. You should come up with a decent attack on us, not something that is personal and insulting.
Thank you, Councillor Aspinall. I hope Councillor Parker has recognised there's been work put forward and that's offered him reassurance in this case.
Well, I'm quite happy to insult Councillor Aspinall. I don't intend to insult anybody else. Well, I happen to be a professional as well, Councillor Aspinall, and I can tell you now that building material costs have gone up nearly 20% in the last 3 or 4 months. So the question was related to my knowledge on what is happening in building at this moment in time. It is expected to go up another 20% in the next 6 months. That was my question. If the officers have taken that into account, I'm quite happy with that, and they've told me that. My question, I think, was based on my knowledge of what is happening in the building trade.
I think Councillor Aspinall, Councillor Parker, we can argue about how it was executed. His question, whether there was relevant contingency, was a valid question. Officers have answered that, and I think he's made clear that he's satisfied with that answer and is not intended to make a slight towards officers. I don't think that was your intention at all. Your ping pong between each other, I'll let you take that outside the chamber as you feel free. But I'd rather not have that while we're having our committee session, if at all possible. Councillor Kendall.
Thank you, Chair. You mentioned a little earlier about the cross-party group. You had Councillor Poppy on a sort of little group with yourself and the Vice Chair. Is that still continuing, that grouping, or is that now sort of come to
that came to an end in that civic year, and we'll have to work out what we do in this civic year. The intention of that committee was we had 3 major projects we wanted to progress forward to a business case stage. All 3 of them are ready to get to a business case stage within this civic year, and then there's no, at the moment there's no need for it. But if projects move, and to Councillor Parker's point, we have enough contingency right now, but if things really happen, then we'll have to, and that will be a useful time to consider alternative business cases as and when is needed. So that may be something we come back to in the future, but for this year, there's no intention of reforming that. However, I am committed to, and I think I've said it to the lead member of the opposition, keeping the lead member of the opposition informed as much as I am about things that are happening, and I hope that has been made clear, because frankly, these are, everything we do in assets outlives all of our time as a councillor, so frankly, partisanship can't really matter. We can quite frankly disagree, and part of that could be partisan, but actually the outcome isn't, and the reality is not, so that's my intent for this.
Okay, Chair. I mean, the reason I say that is obviously Councillor Poppy each time, I'm sure, would have gone back with assurances to his colleagues in the Conservative group, because obviously he was very much on the inside, working with yourself, Chair, and the Vice Chair and officers on those key points. I think what I would say, I mean, I understand the point Councillor Aspinall was saying. I do understand what what Councillor Parker is saying in terms of the figure here. I mean, there is a total capital cost on page 69 of 25 million. The key thing is breaking that down. And I would say to any member, if you've got a problem with any of these figures or concern, ask for a breakdown of those figures. You know, out of that 25 million, what is the contingency in there? If there's no contingency, that's when I think you've got a serious problem, and you'd be very right as the opposition member saying you haven't got a plan with any contingency. But in fairness to the officers, they've worked this through step by step by step by step. There's been contingencies there, and the question should then be, well, what amount of the contingency is being taken up? As Councillor Parker says, costs have changed. There will be an update. There's an update coming in September. It'll be very clear there exactly where we are financially. So, you know, I think, yes, there are figures here, but if you want to get some information behind them, you've obviously got the ability to ask beforehand or ask now. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Kendall. I had Councillor Hurst again.
I think you dealt with it with your ping pong comment. Thank you very much, Chair.
Did I see Councillor Barber, or did I dream that you wanted to contribute? Possibly just dreamt it. Councillor, no one else to speak. Councillor Munden, anything to add?
No, thank you, Chair.
Before we finish, I think it's important for me to acknowledge that the success of opening the swimming pool wet side element, the investment has returned, I believe, a strong value. The feedback has been excellent that we have received so far. Those who've seen the changing rooms, well, I think, and the swimming pool itself, and the new glass and various other features that have actually improved the site, improved the temperature control, improved the humidity challenges, and made it a much better environment to enjoy and swim, I think are welcomed by everyone. And that we had over 1,000 people use the pool again in its opening weekend is a really positive sign that people actually really welcome and responded very highly to it. And also, when you look through the evolution of the project, what happened, people's contributions, and this, even though I had this role, this is my third year, but this thing feels quite long, third year potentially. This project was pre-me as well, and various other councillors have contributed. Councillor Kendall, when I had to come under him, and various others on the other side. This has been a long-term project developing, and I want to thank all councillors who are involved. But at the same time, really want to thank every officer who has been involved in the project to date. Mrs. Barnes, I know this has been both enjoyable and a challenge for you, and in turn not necessarily getting enough credit for your work on it. And in turn, we have others here, Mr. Barnes and Mr. Mayhew, who've made sure in various cases the roof of the current building isn't falling in, or if it has fallen in, at least it's fixed, which has created different challenging moments, and in turn other successes that we made to date, including the solar panels on the International Hall, which, just to make clear, the International Hall will be staying, so those solar panels will not need to be removed or relocated. Again, the officers have really thought about long-term and future planning as they have developed this site, those things that would retain, those things that would be knocked down, which should have us all some reassurance. So thank you to everyone involved. It has been, to date, a success, and in turn, let's hope that success continues in the next stage of the project and its development. I will now vote. We will now vote on the recommendations on page 63 of the agenda. All those in favour? That is carried unanimously. Thank you, members. Item 9 is the work programme. The report begins on page 79 of the agenda. Are there any questions from the committee? If not, I will move the recommendations as set out on page 79. Do I have a seconder?
Happy to second, Chair.
Thank you. There was no questions from committee, and the members are at speak, so we will now vote on the recommendations on page 79 of the agenda. All those in favour? That's passed unanimously. Thank you, members. Item number 10 is the exclusion of the press and the public. Is it agreed that we go into private session to discuss item 11 and the urgent item? Agreed. Thank you. Let's wait, I was going to say.